Welcome to Bogues. This is episode 43. This is actually take 2 of the intro after I completely butchered and stuttered Mike Procopio. But welcome to the show. I'm Andrew Bogut. Mike, Pro, how's it going?
Fan-fucking-tastic after that debacle of a fucking recording that you tried about 3 minutes ago. But no, everything's good, man. Just enjoying the weekend, brother.
Yeah, it's always good. Always good to put the feet up. NBA's a lot going on, man. It's we've been once again failed to talk about the Phoenix Suns the last couple of episodes. We hit them a little bit early. We didn't think they'd do as well as they are this season again, or we don't think they'll make the finals again. But 11 straight. JaVale McGee's been a real good pickup too, so I had to give him a shout out. He's started a few games, had a big night the other night with Aiden out. But what do you see from them? They just seems like they haven't missed a beat from last season.
No, I got a chance to watch them because they were on national TV against the Mavs. I don't get local Mavs games because of my cable company dropped Fox Sports. Long fucking story. But they're playing well, man. Like, they're comfortable. They're role players. They're just they're really confident and they just play hard. They can go down early and then they don't, you can't really fuck with their confidence, man. And, you got CP doing his thing. We talked about JaVale McGee. I've talked about JaVale McGee a bunch. Like, I think JaVale's a good player. When you give him parameters and say, look, this is what we need from you. This is what you cannot do. And I think he works well with that. If you just let him do whatever he wants, that's when he's on Shaq and the Fool almost every night. But if you just give him simple things that he needs to do on a regular basis, he's not bad. I mean, look at him in Golden State. Look at him in LA. Like, he's done pretty good things, and they're good, man. Obviously Book is playing at a high level. Jay Crowder, DeAndre Ayton, in those 2 games against Dallas were good. They're a good, fun, energetic team to watch. And you know what? They're going to give people a run for their money. I was totally wrong about them coming into the season.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't missed a beat. Like, they've just continued to surge in the right direction. I think they're playing team ball. Chris Paul still looks fantastic for a guy his age. Devin Booker's gotten better again, it seems. He's making some big plays for him. But yeah, they've got a good balance on them. So I had to give them a shout out. I still don't know. The West looks open for the most part. Besides Golden State, you don't really know who else is going to be there. And they're definitely going to be up the top. So Golden State, the clear front runners right now. But the West is pretty wide open. So the East is too. The East is even closer. And I want to get into this as well. From the 10th seed to the 1st seed in the East currently is 3.5 games, Pro, and that's Milwaukee in 10. They are 3.5 games out of 1. The East is going to be fun till the end of the regular season and the playoffs. I think it's anyone's ball game. There's probably a few teams we can put a line through, but it's wide open in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of teams that are surprising. Obviously we talked about Cleveland and Washington in prior episodes, but you get Charlotte, hanging in there at 10-7. You get some teams that are a little bit surprising as far as like underachieving. You get the Celtics, you get the Bucks, you get Atlanta, Indiana to a certain extent, even though they were beating the shit out of New Orleans earlier this evening. But it's some surprises. It's a fun, it's a fun conference. You get the Miami Heat doing their thing. We talked about Chicago before. Brooklyn's doing it basically, without one of their best players. So it'll be an entertaining year, and it'll be very entertaining to see who locks up that, those 10 spots, because there's going to be a fight from probably 8.5 to 11 as far as like those seedings at the end of the season.
Yeah, there is. And Brooklyn's now number 1, but barely. Miami 2, Chicago 3. I think those 3 will remain somewhere in that top 4 or 5, I believe. I think Milwaukee's the only other one if they go on a run that can come and challenge. And Philly with Embiid coming back. The Wizards have slid a little bit. They've gone 6-4 in their last 10. Charlotte's in the middle, but it's literally 2 or 3 swing of bad games, good games can completely flip the conference. So it's fun to watch. Atlanta's starting to surge. They've won 3 straight, 4-6 in their last 10. We spoke about them last week about a bit of concern, but now they've bumped up to 7-9. They've a little bit of an easier schedule the last couple of games. They did get Boston, I think, but that'll be fun to watch. I wanted to give me your thoughts around who, if you had to pick today and you got to pick one, who in the top 10 from each conference do you put a line through? Who's going to fall out of the top 10?
from each conference?
Well, Sexton's out for the year for Cleveland, so I'm probably going to say Cleveland. They started really hot. They're 9-8 currently. Sexton's out with a leg injury. I think it's a knee, and he's out for the year. I just think it's hard. I'm not a big Sexton fan, but he does put up numbers. He's a tough guy. He'll be a tough guy to replace on that team for sure. I think he's averaging about 16 for them, and he does provide a tough player to match up against. So if I had a pick right now, somebody in the East to drop out, it's probably going to be them. What about you, Bogues?
That's probably the most sensible pick. Cleveland, obviously, they started off really well. It's just so open and hard to pick, I think. I think Atlanta's going to be, which will go to my next question, they're going to be the one that's going to jump into the 10. Toronto's still a possibility as well. I don't love Boston, but I think they'll be there just because it's 10. If you said, I don't think Boston make the 8, no, I don't think they would in traditional year, but with the play-in, I think they're in the 10. So I think Cleveland's fair enough. And that leads me to our next question in the East. Who from that, do we even have to discuss this, I guess? Who from that bottom 5 would you pick if you had to pick one to bounce up? Atlanta, right?
Yeah, I would say Atlanta for sure. I think, Toronto's hanging in there. Scotty Barnes there, who might be, up there for Rookie of the Year this year, is playing great basketball, but you can't really expect them to stay on top for what they have roster-wise. Atlanta, I think, like you said, they're sort of starting to do it, and there's a lot of season to be played left. I think they have something like 66 games left. Or something like that. So, they have a lot of time to sort of get it together to jump up 2 spots. They're only a game out right now. I'm not a huge Boston fan. Schroeder's actually playing really well for them, carrying them on top, besides Tatum, of course. But I think Atlanta, if there's anyone who's going to sort of put it in the high gear, look, Detroit and Orlando are out. Indiana, even though they started out 6-11, I think they could jump up a spot or 2, possibly 3 to the 10 seed. But I think if anyone's going to really make a big run at this, it's probably going to be Atlanta. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think it's the most sensible. Toronto may be a dark horse as well.
They do play some good team basketball. A little bit of an injury bug there, though. In the West, same question. It'll probably be, for me, the obvious one is OKC Thunder. I think they're higher than even they thought they would be at this point. I don't think they would have been in the 10 seed. But when I look, so if I pick OKC as my one team that I think could bounce out of that top 10, if I had to pick one, I'm struggling out of the bottom 5 with who would go up because they are some bad teams. Houston, New Orleans, we can put a line through for the most part. San Antonio, so got one wrong. I had them in my 10. I just thought they'd scrape in with just with the house that the Spurs built. It's not looking good. Look, they're only a couple of games behind that 10 spot, so it's still realistic. But they don't look good. They look janky. Sacramento just can't figure it out, and Minnesota, I just don't like Minnesota. I just think they have a huge identity crisis with who they're trying to be and whose team they are and all that bullshit. So if I had to pick one from that bottom 5, I'd probably still say San Antonio. As crazy as that sounds, at 4-11. But I did look at their schedule. They've got a rough 10 coming up as well, so they could be in some trouble. But I'm just waiting for that rodeo road trip they go on when they usually surge and Pop, has a bottle of wine a day and they find something to win some games. But look, it'd be OKC and San Antonio would be the flip flop for me. What about yourself?
I'm gonna go a little outside my comfort zone here. I'm going to say the Lakers drop out of the 10.
No way.
Yeah, I'm going to say, now look, I'm probably fucking wrong on this one. No doubt about it. But you know what?
The league's not letting that happen, bro. There's no chance.
Dude, I don't like what I see out of that fucking team. I don't. They got to go full, 86 Celtics as far as, they got to go totally, those 3 guys got to play out of their asses just to compete with average teams. And they're an injury away, Bogues, from being really fucked. You got Anthony Davis in injury history. You got, unless, LeBron's been banged up a little bit. Their role players haven't been very good. Look, I would probably say, the safe bet's probably Portland to fall out of the 10, for me. But I'm going to go Lakers. There's something wrong with that team. I don't know what it is. Chemistry, feel, what have you. And I'm probably going to be wrong on this one. But you know what? Fuck it. I never go out on the edge with most of my picks. They're usually pretty conservative. I'm going to go with the Lakers dropping out of the 10. Now, it's probably going to be it's probably going to be Minnesota. It's probably going to be, OKC, whatever. I think OKC's the 10. They're tied with Minnesota, I believe. But I'm going to go with Lakers. And the team that's going to pop up, Oklahoma City's not going to allow themselves to get up in the playoffs. They're definitely going to try to trying to get to the 13th seed in the conference. I don't think they're going to be able to catch New Orleans or Houston. And I don't trust Sacramento as guys. I don't think they're good enough to really make that jump. I think they're, besides like Harrison Barnes, there's really not a lot of players that I really trust in that team. And so a team that's going to go up.
So out of the 5, who would you pick out of the bottom 5 then? Because OKC's in 10 right now. They're in the playoffs as of today.
Yeah.
You've got Minnesota, Sacramento, San Antonio, New Orleans, and Houston. Who would you pick?
I go Minnesota, Bogues. Yeah. I say Minnesota. We'll get into that. San Antonio, Bogues, they're just janky.
They are.
The young players just aren't very good. They're okay, and then they picked up a couple of nice vets in free agency, but I don't see it. I tried. I watched them a few times, and I just don't see it.
They lost a few games at the wire, though, early on. They could easily be, 6-9 right now, maybe even more, maybe, 7-8. They did lose some games early on. I think they'll steal some games when the season gets to the mud running stage where it's just quicksand and everyone's tired. They'll probably steal a few games, but I just don't trust Minnesota. I think they're talented. They have no identity, nothing. I don't know what they are right now. Are they a go to Towns? Are they a Edwards? I don't know if you saw the vision of Anthony Towns getting back on defense mid Edwards ISO, which was hilarious.
Oh no.
Yeah, so Edwards had it on the wing. As soon as he caught it, you just see Anthony Towns on the opposite wing start running back on defense before he'd even get taking a shot. He was crossover. You just see the dude running out of the screen. So there's obviously an issue there. Hopefully they figure it out. It'd be nice to see them actually have some success. But the Lakers, I don't think are falling out of the 10. I don't think they'll win a championship. Definitely, I agree with that. I think that they've got an old roster, which we mentioned pre-season. What are they? Are they? That's why I always had a question mark around Russ and LeBron together because of usage. LeBron's a high usage guy. If he's not scoring, he's assisting. That's just been his career, and rightfully so. He's one of the best players of all time. You bring Russ in that conversation, and it's the same thing. Russ's success of triple doubles is his usage. If he's not scoring, he's passing, he's creating. So you got two of those guys. You're asking one of them now on the floor to be more of a role player. They're both not great shooters from 3 feet set shooters that you wouldn't really use them as a spot up. LeBron's gotten better from 3. Russ, you'd live with him shooting, winning a game with his 3-point shot. So their defense isn't great. Melo's provided a decent spark for him actually, and Monk's been okay. But they need some more. It just seems like you've got that championship hangover 2 years later, and it just doesn't. I don't know. That roster's a strange roster, but we'll watch that space. But I think that's fair enough. I think I'm San Antonio. You've got Minnesota. We'll watch that space and see what OKC does. Whether they want to get a pick or maybe still a playing game. That'll be interesting. All right, let's move on to Ben Simmons again. Now, this is an interesting conversation. So our friend at the house is Strauss, Sherwood. We'll give you Substack a plug again. There was a bombshell that went relatively unnoticed in that article, Pro, and we talked about it in the group chat. There's 2 stories in his article, so I urge you to check it out. You'll need to pay, so you can't be like me and get a freebie or, just be like Pro and swipe your credit card. But there's 2 stories in here that he went through. And look, the Substack articles are great. I highly recommend them. He writes outside of the norm at times, which is great, and different perspectives on things, which I like. But number 1 is the chess moves by Rich Paul with the mental health stuff, which we've spoken about before. I guess there's the back and forth. The NBA has, post DeMar DeRozan had coming out saying that he had mental health issues a couple of seasons ago and talking about how he was depressed and all that. The NBA went on an initiative to promote, mental health help and all that kind of stuff. So Rich Paul's used that somewhat in this whole debate to try and get him out of Philly. He breaks that down pretty nicely. That's one story. The second story, which went relatively unnoticed by national media, was he basically got word that the NBA is subtly and quietly supporting Philadelphia, not allowing Ben to just be traded and fining him for not playing. And the NBA is on the boat with Philly of wanting them to draw a line in the sand and just sit him for the whole season and not trade him. That's gone unnoticed. And this is from, Ethan's article is quoted, from his sources, he has some pretty good sources in the league. This isn't made up. Where the NBA's concern is, what does a contract mean if you let Ben Simmons walk right now and go to wherever he wants? It's different if you're going into an expiring contract. You're John Wall, you're whoever it may be, just time to move on. You've done your 4 or 5 years with the team you signed your extension with. This is a whole different circumstance. He's in year 2 of his big extension. The argument then becomes, let's say Zion Williamson, he signs at the max, gets that bump up, which we've spoken about, gets that bump up because it's the home team. It's the max deal with your home team, and then asks for a trade. So arguably he couldn't get that money from somewhere else in free agency because they couldn't afford to pay him as much. But he's got that and now wants to move. But, the capper on all this is, the rumor is the NBA wants Philly to completely hold out, which kind of explains why Daryl Morey has used the language that he's used, that I don't really give a shit, I'll sit him for 4 years. I mean, what are your thoughts around that? It's
a very complicated issue. As far as the league being behind it, they're going to have to be behind it because the fact that, look, like, we know the players are the superstars. We know the players, really make this league go because they're in the entertainment business. But you can't hold teams hostage whenever you want to. It's unprofessional, and it puts the teams at a really bad way because right when they find out that a player wants to get traded, right away the trade value on most of these deals are going to go, not in the team's favor. So like these other teams that want to trade, they're not going to give top dollar for these players, in this trade because they know the player wants to get out. He's forcing his way out and he's going to get him. He's going to get them out. So this is all these teams have as far as leverage. They got picks and they got players in these trades, in these deals they can make, and to build their rosters. So if you're automatically going to say, well, we're going to sign this guy to a max deal, and automatically a year into it, he says, I want out. And there's nothing you can do. I'll just shut it down. Trade me. Well, the team's going to be like, what the fuck? Like, it's going to start really devaluing these franchises in the sense that the moves they can make, nobody's safe. It's the Wild Wild West. It's fucking, it's Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Like, when is this craziness going to stop?
Well, contracts then written on toilet paper, essentially. If that's continued to be allowed, it's just not right. Let me read I'll read a few paragraphs which give some color and context around what I'm talking about. There's a secret partner in this standoff, one only too happy to watch the Sixers play bad cop. It's Adam Silver's NBA, finally imposing a limit on player empowerment excesses. So basically said that Adam Silver is all for this. Adam Silver just does not want to be seen as taking a side on this publicly, though he clearly has one. Why is Silver shy about representing where he's at on this? While the NBA has feared criticisms might arise from any perceived mistreatment, preferring the Sixers to act as a lightning rod. Fears of Simmons' proactive backlash may have been overblown, though. The common reception of his grievances reminds of Bert Cooper's line of "Who cares?" So the fans certainly don't. He goes on to talk about Rich Paul a little bit, but it's such a valid point, and it's scary times for Ben Simmons. And I'm incorrect. He's in the second year of his deal. He has 4 years left on a 5-year contract, which is a total value of $177 million. And Strauss then goes on to note, which we've just talked about, in 2019, he signed the type of extension that's specifically designed for a player to maximize his earnings by staying with the team that drafts the player. If Simmons is able to withhold services until he gets what he wants, then contracts have no meaning. And bang on, man. That's a be-all and end-all. We've spoken about this before, but this has generally been James Harden. It's generally been guys towards the end of their contracts, end of their tenure. This is a unique circumstance that the NBA hasn't faced yet, where a guy signs that big deal and then wants out a year later. It's not looking good, and I'm quite interested to see that the leverage now is bouncing back towards Philly. Do other teams even bother making an offer, knowing now unless we offer something that's A+ grade, they're not even going to listen because they're just going to sit the kid? On the flip side, what does Ben Simmons do if they do sit him? Do you think if it gets past trade deadline, does he make a return for Philly Pro, or is that ship sailed?
I think that at some point he's going to have to come back, Bogues. In this deal with the league being behind Philly doesn't help Philly. It doesn't help anybody. Both of these parties are fucked. Because the more this guy doesn't play, the more the more of a stink cloud that goes over this whole deal. No legitimate team's going to want this guy. None. Like, the only ones that are going to want him are these bottom feeder teams that can't get anybody to come to their franchise, and they're just going to say, fuck it, we need this guy because he's like, at least he's an asset. And as far as the play, like the team's concerned, the more he doesn't play, the less value he gets. And I think the more like these trades are just going to stay the same. You're going to get the same level of trade going forward than you're going to have today. I don't think it's going to get much less because I think the kid's going to be, even with this over his head, he's probably still going to be a top 30, top 40 player. You're still going to get some type of value for him, but it's not going to help anybody by this guy not playing. He's going to need to play. If Nwore is going to put both feet in, they're going to need to play. Because look, this team is sort of not. They started off hot. They're losing some games. I know Embiid's been out, but they're going to need this guy because now they're sitting on a $30 million asset that they're just sitting on the bench. Even though they're really good young players that the scouts drafted that Morey fired, that they're sort of keeping them afloat. With some of the players they have on their roster, they're going to need something else. And this guy's sitting there. He either could help them, or if somebody else could help them, they could trade him for. And they're going to have to do something. So if they're not going to trade the kid, I think the kid's going to have to play because you're not going to force your way out of town. Obviously we've seen this if the league's behind it, and your value's not going anywhere. So you've got to do something. And the only way you're going to have value, Bogues, is fucking playing in games.
Yeah, I think he doesn't play pre-deadline. I think he's on that wagon of getting out at all costs. My question would be, what if he's not moved pre-deadline? What if he's still a Philadelphia 76er as the deadline passes? Does he then say, as much as I hate what's going on, I hate a few of my teammates, I don't like my head coach and his comments, I hate Daryl Morey, do I now need to just go and play and try to make a playoff run with Philly? That's more my question, whether he even does that. Because, right now, like you said, to get his value up and get out of there, the best thing would be to play and show that your mental health is okay, everything's doing well, you can still run up and down a court, you're in decent shape. My question is, after, can he swallow his pride and show up? Albeit knowing what that 76er crowd's going to do to him, for however many home games they have left.
Yeah, it's not the shooting that's going to kill him. It's not... Yeah, even the attitude. Look, there's a lot of guys with huge fucking attitudes and just assholes in the league. There's just a lot of them. But it's his way that he deals with adversity. That's the thing that this kid has to get over, because all of these things, all of these flaws that people are pointing at, it all stems back to that. Anytime this kid has had any adversity, he just floundered. He really went south in most situations. In college, in pros, the whole national team thing. Like, you could point at a million examples. This is what he's got to deal with. I'll save him $3 million in sports psychologists and bills. You gotta learn how to deal with adversity. When you get punched in the face, what the fuck are you gonna do? Most players gonna have to sink or they're gonna have to swim. He's gonna have to deal with this. So if he's dealing with the Philly guys calling him an asshole now, or a month from now, or a year from now, he's going to have to deal with it.
It's not going to matter. Hiding's, exactly. You got to face it. And that's the hardest thing. I remember going back to Milwaukee for my first game with Golden State, knowing how that all ended, and I was worried about that. But I didn't play that first game, but I still sat on the bench and took all the shit that I copped. And that's just something once you do it, once you've done it and you don't respond and you get through it, people will kind of get over it after game 2, 3, 4, 5. But that first game, boy, that might be worth you flying to. You can do a Rogue Bogues live from the audience, because it's going to be hilarious.
Let's do it.
Whether he's a home player or an away player. So we said it from the start. We wish him all the best. I hope it all works out. But it's, that is a bombshell in my opinion, that the league is quietly in support of Philly not playing him. They're this isn't about, you don't play him until you trade him, we support that. No. They're in support about saying, we're just going to sit you for the whole year. You can just rot on the bench or on your couch at home. We're going to keep finding the shit out of you, which they're doing again. And the NBA is in full support of it, because they know this is a watershed moment, bro. This is what people don't understand. This is a big moment in contractual disputes and the Players Association and the CBA and the league, because the next CBA is going to be very, very interesting, bro, because there's going to be some shit that's going to hit the players in the face coming from owners and GMs that they're not going to like, and the union's going to be, they better be ready, because there's going to be something in there that's going to give owners and GMs more security than they currently have, which is zero. So that's going to be interesting when that whole debate fires up again.
And the big fight's going to be, Bogues, I think, too, on the player side to the management. First of all, with this whole John Wall thing, I'm hearing conflicting reports. I'm hearing that he says he's not going to play until he's traded or bought out or whatever, or traded. I don't think he's going to take a buyout. But, like, okay, so for the players, I think their biggest gripe would be, you know, look, them shutting things down and holding teams hostage. We all know that happens. But then their fight is going to be, what happens when these guys just tell us to go home? And quote unquote, I still want to play, but they're just telling me to go home. I'm a bad fit. See, I think the two things that the league going to have to deal with are the players that hold these guys hostage with if they want to get out of town. And the second thing is the teams that just tell these guys to go home, you know, because they're quote unquote bad fits. That's the problem with the contract, right? Like the contract's fully guaranteed. You negotiated for this deal that you wanted. You got this really good deal. In most cases, it fares with the player, not the team. So you get this deal. The only problem is now the team could, you know, however they feel fit, they could use you. They could use you. They could play you to the fullest extent. They could tell you to fuck off and bring you off the bench. There's no guarantee of what they need to do with your contract. They already paid you. So where does the, like, trust lie, Bogues? You know, as a player, if they're saying, hey, Bogues, we're just not going to play you and we don't have a trade for you right now, we just want you to go home, how are you feeling as a player? Are you feeling like, hey, fuck it, like, we negotiated this deal, I'm getting my money, but, like, you want to play and you want to go somewhere where you could be used? It's not a black and white issue is what I'm saying. It's like there's a lot of gray in this stuff, you know?
Yeah, and that was brought up in our Q&A, which will run hopefully a few of those on this podcast from the Callin app. But that was brought up. It was like, you know, we had a question around that it's not comparable. Some people think it's not. I mean, there is a correlation to an extent, but it's not. It's definitely not 50-50. I think, you know, John Wall's still getting paid at the end of the day, and we don't know what. I think Houston's been pretty professional by not making too much comment about it. Like you said, you've heard conflicting stories around it, so we don't know where the truth lies. Probably in the middle. But yeah, there needs to be some cover, because the union, and they're just going to come out and say, well, if a player signs an extension and then wants to hold out until he's traded, why can't a team say, well, John Wall, we're sitting you until you're traded? But that's a trickier one to manage, because what if a coach just says, all right, we're gonna play you token, we're gonna play you 10 minutes, so everything's per the rule. You know, everyone's gonna manipulate shit, right? It's like when teams rest guys now, they don't write rest, they write flu, or they write, you know, because they're gonna get fined, right? So that's easy to manipulate. But I think the other way is just after signing an extension, don't sign the extension. That's my point. Like, if you don't want to stay in Philly, I like the penalty that we've discussed. Like, if you're Ben Simmons right now, you sign that rookie extension with your team, which gives you a bump of 15 to 20% odd, let's say. If you want to get traded, you wipe that 20% off the total of your deal for the next team instantly, and that goes back to Philly. That actually goes back to Philly, or something along those lines, right? So Portland takes Ben Simmons' contract in full, and then 15 to 20% of it, whatever that extension mark is, goes back to Philly. Then you'd have a different conversation, because then you're like, okay, you've got some skin in the game if you want out. You're losing 15 to 20% of your total check. Philly then has some insurance, and we get some cash back in this deal as well. And the team trading for him needs to eat a bit more. You know, it's the total of the salary. So I think that's the fairest way to go. But I doubt the NBA does that to fix it.
No, there's not a way, Bogues, where you can, like, look, as a player, you got to be a professional. You got to do your job every day, regardless if you're playing 40 minutes a night or 4 minutes a night. As a team, you got to try to treat that player as professionally as possible. Try to evaluate, like, both sides are going to do what's best for themselves. And that's just a tough relationship, right? And there's no way, like, if a player signs a deal and then 2 years later the teams are like trying to lose and they don't want to win games and they're trying to move you and they want to play this young kid that they just drafted. This is a tough situation with the Philly thing, because it's never really been happening. I think that he wanted to be there. I think when he signed the extension, he was fine. I just think this whole playoff thing really fucked him up. You know, like, fucked his whole deal up, and it fucked their deal up, their relationship with the kid and the kid's relationship with the team. And then this is why he wants to get out. So I don't think he signed that deal knowing he wanted to leave. But who knows? I'm not a mind reader.
I agree with that. I think that's, I totally agree with that. Everything was rosy and great when he signed his extension. But, you know, then you can have players in the future manipulating it. So there needs to be a hard rule around it. They need to figure out a rule that, like our suggestion or something else, that if you sign, there needs to be a penalty that if you do that, you're losing some of your bottom line, or the fact that you need to, you don't get paid at all until you start playing the games at the end of the day. So, but then becomes that pissing contest of trying to get traded and all that kind of stuff. I'm not playing until you trade me. But yeah, for a player to do that in the first year of his rookie extension, we'd have to maybe get StatMuse to look it up. But I don't know anyone that's done that in the first year of their rookie extension. This is a first, I believe. And that's why I think the NBA is quietly involved in pushing Philly to not budge on their demand. So we'll watch that space. Wish him the best. All right. Enes has clipped the King Pro, which has been, it's made news over the last couple of weeks. He's been slowly needling him along the way. For those not familiar, Enes Kanter has basically said that, called out LeBron James and said, look, you pretend to care about social justice. This is his quotes, but it's money over morals for the king. Did you educate yourself about slave labor? Basically saying that, you wear Nikes, your company engages in slave labor. You don't say anything about that, but you promote every other social justice cause that's, I guess, not going to affect you or your brand or your money. LeBron's reply, he was asked about it. The reply was it was a nothing reply. And in fairness, LeBron knows that he cannot reply because if he says anything even if it's something like, I'll look into some of the practices about making my shoes in China will cancel him just for that. So he can't answer it. So his answer was more going after Enes personally, saying he walked by me, he had a chance to address me as a man, basically calling him a pussy, essentially. But what are your thoughts? I think, look, as much of a drama as this is, I think Enes is spot on. I've been vocal about this from the start, that you can't, if you're going to take the podium of voicing, slave labor and social justice issues, they're pretty similar no matter what country you look in. Human rights violations are human rights violations. So if you're gonna put your words on the table about one issue, then if it's a similar human rights violation, you should have the same thought process. But obviously he's muzzled because he's paid so much money from China. So Enes has a point, 110% in my opinion. Should he go about it this way? He's probably what's up for discussion. But what are your thoughts around it? Well,
the first thing that's going to come about is they're going to go back in time and watch Enes throughout his career wear Nikes throughout most of his career. So if he's got a
Kentucky,
problem with
right?
Nike,
He was Kentucky too, right? So the Nike
in the NBA, he played in their game, he was involved with them early on, and I'll give it to him. He was a young kid. So then, look, everybody knows about the practices of the Nikes, deal in the Philippines and other places in Asia and stuff. We all know that. But the thing is, Enes wore Nike throughout his whole career and almost all his NBA career. And also, I want to know if Enes is making $95 million a year or so, whatever LeBron's making from Nike. I want to know if he would have the same views. That's the thing. Look, we all know there's a million things you could fight for. There's a million injustices that are happening around the world. And I get it. If LeBron wants to step up on one, he probably has to step up on more than one, especially if they're similar. But look, I'm not going to tell a person how to feel, what have you. I just want to, I think most people that say this stuff, I want to know if it was flipped, if he would have the same belief system. Are you going to say no to $95 million a year or whatever Nike's paying LeBron, to sweep some things under the rug in your thought process? Plus, Google's been around a long time. You wore Nike your whole career and you've been this sort of spokesperson for, what Enes has been throughout his whole career, trying to be outspoken about this stuff. Well, you knew about Nike. I knew about Nike when I was in high school about that stuff that happened. Well, he still wore Nike. So
I don't think he was. He's been probably outspoken the last probably 4 or 5 years though. Arguably, early on, you didn't hear shit about him off the court really. But I think it's a fair point. I think if Enes had the $90 million deal, it would be a different conversation. But
I'm not trying to poke holes in anybody. Look, Bogues, I don't.
Oh no, it's fair though. Look, it's fair. It's a fair point you make. Money talks, bullshit walks. If you're making $90 million, you'd shut the fuck up as well. But I guess at the end of the day, the point is then if you're going to pick this is how I see it, right? If I'm going to be an advocate for racism or sexism or social justice or whatever, right? If there's, let's say, racism or sexism over here and I completely condemn it and I stand to be against sexism and racism, which everyone should, of course. But then if it's within my own company or it's within someone that sponsors me, I can't then turn a blind eye to that. And I think that's a valid point that Enes makes. And that's the company that's sponsoring you. Everyone knows why. So it should be called out. Everyone knows why. They're paying you a shitload of money. So now you can turn a blind eye to the very thing that you're outspoken about when it doesn't affect you. That's the hypocrisy in all this as well. And I think that's whether you agree with the way Enes has done it, the shoe, painting his shoes, that he once wore Nikes, would he do it if it was 90? I think that we put that aside and we all have our opinion on that. And you're probably right. My point is you can't pick and choose things like racism, when to fight for racism and sexism and when to not. That's just that's my thought. And I think most people would agree with that. You can't pick and choose it. Oh, they're paying me $1 million. I'll turn my blind eye to slave labor now. Like, that's perfectly fine. But
that's most people, Bogues.
It is, most but it's people. Wrong. It's wrong. And that's what's wrong with society, that we can be bought out of our beliefs. We can be bought out of what we believe because the politician said it or Nike said it. Like, Nike's genius in all this. And look, I put on the table that they were a sponsor of mine for a number of years. I never even really thought about how the shoes were made or the clothes, and never gave it a second thought. Like, I wore Nikes, I had Nike clothes, they paid me. But obviously further on into my career, you realize, they're probably not the best practices of how shit shows up on your doorstep and how easy it is for us to order, that there's actual people out there making that. But it's Nike's genius in all this. They've ran a bunch of advertisements around social justice, Kaepernick, equality. They had a famous soccer commercial with, I think the LGBT community and all different causes, which is what it is. But it's that's kind of somewhat shadowed what the hell they're doing overseas. It's kind of, they've funded all this PR campaign about we're for equality. Just don't look over here, though. That's kind of the genius of a big corporation like Nike, that we're for the cause, fist to the sky, but we do have little kids making our shit overseas. Just don't talk about that, because we are throwing money at this. So I think Enes's point is valid. How he's gone about it's a whole different story. Could he be a bit hypocritical? Sure. But I don't think you can pick and choose social justice causes based on, this is a sponsor, or I'm not educated enough about it, or, everyone knows clear as day. It's the same as iPhones and Androids and all that, all the screens where it's mined from, there's slave labor camps with kids set up, and we've all got phones, I guess. So I guess at the end of the day, we might be all hypocritical.
No, I think, and I think there's two types of people in this, Bogues. I think it's the people that, if it affects them versus not affecting them. We talked about that. And the second one is like, they put all their energy into one cause. And they don't want, that's they can't fight every battle. I'm not saying whatever LeBron's doing, but you're right. These people who are really big on social justice should be big on social justice everywhere. But again, I think it all comes back to, does it affect me or doesn't affect me? And they're hypocritical in that. If you're going to be big and outspoken about it, be outspoken about it everywhere. And I agree where Enes is coming from for there.
Yeah, but that's my point. You can't, you just can't pick and choose it, and that's the hardest thing. You could say I think back in the day you could have hid behind, I don't know enough about it. It's overseas, but not with the internet, not with everything going on. It'll only take you 5 minutes to read what's happened overseas, and it's not something that you need to send a telegram or a fucking pigeon overseas to get you some information, right? But
right.
Next question: Will Enes Kanter be in the league next year? What do you think?
He'll be in a league. I don't know about what league he's in.
Well, he can't go to China.
No, he can't go to China.
Yeah, imagine he's signing China though. How funny would it be?
He can't go to Turkey. Oh, that would be what if 3 teams from China offers him $15 million a year just to fucking boo the fuck out of him?
And then he lands and disappears like that tennis player.
What happened? A tennis player disappeared?
Apparently, there's a tennis player that in China, Chinese tennis player. I'd have to find the name.
No shit.
Let me Google that while we're talking. But she criticized the government official, saying that he Peng Shuai, so saying that she was essentially sexually abused or sexual misconduct with someone in politics in China, and ever since then she's no one's seen her So then the
Oh, no shit.
yeah, the World Tennis Association, a bunch of people, Serena Williams have all said like hashtag like where is she? What the hell's going on? And then the government released a video which is supposedly her, and so it's like literally she hasn't been seen in public. So the government then released the video saying, "Oh no, she's fine. Here's a video," and the video is kind of like apparently it's like insufficient. People are saying it's like could be edited, like so.
Oh fuck.
Yeah. Just note, if you're in China, do not speak out about the government at any cost. And I can vouch for that because I had a few bolts thrown at my head during games. So not the best position to be in.
Jeez.
Crazy.
Well, I feel really great about talking about it now. If you don't hear from me, Bogues, just, it's been a fun 42 and a half episodes.
Oh, if I'm still alive after what I said and went through, you'll be right. Don't worry about it.
Appreciate you.
All right, next one we're going to. This one was this is an interesting one. NBA general managers forming an association to support executives amid the Portland Trailblazers investigation, sources say. You sent me this one. That was via ESPN. So they're trying to form their own union, right? They league GMs have formed a steering committee to create a constitution, opened an LLC, which is a company in the US similar to Australia or PTY Ltd, and informed the league office of their intentions to form a group similar in purpose and structure to the National Basketball Coaches Association, sources said. So I guess they have a worry, dozens of executives told ESPN, the Portland's internal probe has stoked fears that organizations can make decisions to fire top basketball executives for any number of traditional reasons, team performance, personality conflicts, differing philosophies, and search simultaneously for ways to pursue cause violations in contracts. So what that basically means, dumbed down, if you find cause to fire someone, kind of like what Olshey's been investigated for, you can fire them without pay. So what this union is trying to form with the general managers is we need to protect ourselves, because what's to stop a team just getting 5 people to come together within the organization saying this guy said bad things to me, they harassed me, and he's got 3 years at 15 million left. See you later, buddy. We're not giving you any of your money because of cause. So, man, the drama just continues in the NBA. It's never a dull moment, but I kind of agree with the premise of what they're putting together, because this can be an issue down the line where, you sign a GM to a long-term deal, you realize, holy shit, he's bad. God knows what can happen, what teams will do, what owners will do. We know, we spoke about last week, Sava and how stingy and cheap he is at times. Donald Sterling, probably not the best examples to give, but they're shrewd businessmen that will try to save a dollar wherever they can. You can't tell me that they won't try to, use that rule to their advantage, bro.
Yeah, I think it's just they need some coverage. Like, I think they're, the money goes towards like legal, trying to get them legal help, PR firms to try to help them. Because look, just like players, like GMs only have a certain amount of time where they're relevant. And look, it's bad enough if you lose games and get fired to derail your career. But imagine, you get caught up on charges about bad work environments, hostile work environments, especially now that it's been coming out more and more. And that's going to be a hot topic and a hot button, a catchphrase that's going to be used for years now. And it could derail your career. They could hold your money. It's a fucked up situation. But that's just the league. And the league is, hey, how do I get leverage? How do I leverage that into as many contracts and how much money in years as much as I can, and then until they get me? And look, owners, this whole thing stems from O'Shea wanting Chauncey Billups, and she wanted Becky Hammon, and he won the argument, but she was going to win the war. And that's basically it. And, Bogues, look, in every walk of life, every job that you have, you're going to have confrontation. You're going to have hard conversations. You're going to get yelled at when you fuck up. So what constitutes a hostile work environment? That you yell at somebody? That you scream at somebody? That you call them a motherfucker once in a while? That's the thing. And that's the thing that I get. What is a hostile work environment? And are you going to get a GM fired for it? And look, if you're throwing stuff at people and threatening them and doing some really fucked up shit, I get that's a hostile work environment. I've seen that happen close up. I'm saying but if you're just getting yelled at, is that a hostile work environment?
That's what I mean. Who defines hostile, especially in 2021? Hostile could be, hey, Jimmy, you fucked up. You need to do better tomorrow. Have a good night, but think about it and improve tomorrow. Oh my God, he said fuck. That's hostile. You know what I mean? that's the problem these days. It's like hostile can be in the eye of the beholder, just like beauty. It can be, it's subjective. It's has that person that you use that word with had a bad history with that word from a father or from a coach in the past? I mean, who knows? I'm clutching at straws here, but Jesus, it definitely goes to the eye of the beholder, and that becomes a very slippery slope.
Yeah. Darren Erman had it right when he recorded Mark Jackson. I think you should fucking record everybody. This way everybody knows. Everybody is on the up and up now. I love that behind the scenes mic'd up bullshit because everybody knows there's a camera in their face, so they're going to fucking act.
Exactly.
Mark Jackson wasn't acting. That was really behind the scenes. That was actual reality TV.
Uncut.
Yeah. That's reality TV. And the only one who got cut was fucking Darren Erman from that. But my thing is, look, if everybody's recording, then everybody's good. But that's the thing. Nobody knows. It's he said versus she said. And that once this shit gets rolling, there's no way you're going to get out of it. But to take somebody's money is,
it's a fair point, though. I see why they're forming the union. I'm not a big fan of unions myself, but I see why they're forming a coalition, because this could lead down another road of teams trying to save on a GM's contract and moving him on for cause, and then it leaves that GM having to get some cash together to fight his cause for the money that he should be due. You move to a city, you set yourself up, you've got a 5-year deal, and then 2 years in they think you're shit, and then you've got some sort of bullshit cause served on you. You've got to then prove yourself that cause is incorrect. So yeah, it's a slippery slope. I get it, but just an interesting one that we noted. So we'll have now essentially a coaches union, a players union, a GM's union. What's next? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Sava and these guys try to form an owners union soon.
An owners union, that would be great. That'd be great. Led by the Legion of Doom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, holding an axe. All right, next one, last one before we get onto some Australian stuff. Tristan Thompson, a quote that you probably like. The quote reads, "I don't need no fucking coach to inspire me." So after the game, NBA champion Tristan Thompson had a lot to say about the Kings, and a clip of him speaking can be seen in a tweet that is embedded below on the Twitter account of the Kings on NBCS. Quote, "You got to be ready to play. Your number's called. You're in the damn game. I don't need no fucking coach to inspire me," Thompson said to reporters. "Never that, never have, never will. The day I need a coach to inspire me is the day I fucking retire." Fair, bro?
Yeah, it's fair because they were saying that, I think Luke Walton was under scrutiny and on the hot seat. Shocker. Every coach on every second of every fucking day in Sacramento is on the hot seat, it seems like. And he's basically saying that, look, it's the players. If we can't fucking play and get this shit done, this is how I read it. I don't need a coach to fucking inspire me. I'm going to just get this shit done because I'm a player. I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to get it done, and I'm going to fucking play. And that's basically it. To me, I judge a coach by, are they prepared? Do they make adjustments? How are their ATOs and how are they down the clutch? And yeah, the players develop, I guess, right? But if a team goes on if you go on a fucking run and you don't call a timeout, how you use your timeout. But how many coaches have you been around that you've been really fucking inspired? Is a coach going to really get you to play much better? Nah, maybe as a young kid who doesn't really understand the NBA and needs somebody to help him through it, maybe. But for the most part, once you start getting going in the NBA, it's on you. It's on the player more than the coach. The coach makes very little difference in the NBA, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
And as far as
totally, if you need to be motivated for 82 games, you probably shouldn't be playing in the NBA. It's that simple. Every now and then, if you have had a 10-game lull where you're struggling and you're not shooting the ball well, it's more of a, the good coaches that I've been around will call you to their office. They'll watch some film. They'll maybe say, "Hey man, you're going at 85% at practice sometimes, maybe go at 110 and get some game quality stuff up, maybe change your routine." They have those honest conversations with you. But if people think the NBA and pro sports are about a coach coming in with this great talk, which we had with Mark Jackson, he gave a boxing speech every second time out about Muhammad Ali and someone's on the ropes and someone's throwing the first jab or whatever it was. And you can only use those once or twice a year to 3 times a year, and it's just one of those things. I remember once with Mark Jackson, I probably told this story. I don't know if I've told you this story, but we're playing in Dallas. So you probably were there at the time. You guys were punching us. We were down. This is Mark Jackson. We were down. I think we're down 35 at halftime, right? right?
Mhm.
Just one of those road trips, one of those games, playing like shit. He called in, he had a friend at the game that was a pastor. He called him in at halftime. Instead of the halftime speech, he had the pastor just give us a sermon, right?
No kidding.
Yeah, we ended up losing by 55 instead of 35, but that's a story for another day. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like, did that, so if we would have won that game, was that the motivating factor? It's all very subjective again, and I agree with Tristan Thompson. He got drafted to a shitty environment. They were bad in Cleveland early on, then LeBron came, and then they won a championship, were part of many finals runs, so he understood what the daily grind is and probably understood that, hey, T-Lu's not rah-rahing us every day. He used that infamous speech after game 5, we're coming back to grab our cash, when he put it in the ceiling apparently. Other than that, he probably didn't spend all his bullets at once, so he would know, and I totally agree. If people think Luke Walton's not motivating him, that's probably more a player issue than it is a coach issue.
Yeah, look, for a player, it's all about your routine. It's all about how you handle adversity and how much character you have. Like, that's going to get you through the night. It's not your coach. I don't give a fuck how many ATOs your coach could draw up on the board or how many fucking rah, Cisco fucking speeches they give you. You got to be able to dig out of these holes yourself. And it's the only way you're going to get out of it is having a routine that works for you, having a work ethic, and having some fucking pride. And he's right. Like, he gets himself out of this shit. Coach is not. What the fuck is a coach going to say? You got to get downhill or all that bullshit they like to say, space and pace, all that shit. All that shit out of a fucking fortune cookie from a fucking Chinese food restaurant. Give me a fucking break. Like, that shit ain't. I've seen those fucking speeches. They're all bullshit. The player has to say, they got to look themselves in the mirror. They got to suck it the fuck up, and they got to get the job done. The coach ain't going to do it. Yeah, the coach is going to drop that play. He's going to use his timeout. He's going to do some things and be prepared. That's what a coach does, and make adjustments. But the fucking players are the ones that are going to get him through it.
Yeah, and arguably the head coach has enough stresses that I would even argue that the assistants and the guys like yourself in your role, player development, that's probably more their role as well. Is when a player needs motivation or is in a rut, the coach can only manage one out of the 15 so many times. You've got 15 players to manage. You've got rosters. You've got shit. Who am I making inactive tonight? Who's active? Who am I calling up? So it definitely...
Bogues, most assistants want to inspire guys that are averaging 17 points or more a game. If you're dipping below like 8 points a game, they ain't going to give you many fucking speeches, brother. They're going to run for the fucking hills, all right? But yeah, you're right. Some assistant coaches do have to put their arm around players and fucking talk them through it. Usually it's the like rookies that have, or the first couple of year guys that you really got to they got to figure their shit out. But like guys like Tristan Thompson, what are you going to say to fucking Tristan? He's been through every type of team, awful teams, finals teams, championship. He's been through 1,000 coaches. He knows like what the fuck to do. So he could he's going to be the one getting him out of it. If you got to give him that Muhammad Ali shit every day, it just, he's in the wrong fucking sport.
Yeah, you're just wasting time on things that don't matter as well. So that's, head coach's job is X's and O's, rotations, trying to get better and win the next game. The last thing you need to do is have I lost the group? Do we maybe need to go bowling or go to some laser tag and build up some camaraderie?
I've been through that bullshit.
Yeah. Everyone has. Everyone has in every sport probably. And there's a time and a place for those as well, don't get me wrong, but not when you're in a rut. All right, real quick, NBL, the preseason has started. It is about what I expected. It's kind of hard in the NBL, much like the NBA. There's even less amounts of games, so it's kind of hard to judge. I think the league's going to be pretty close for the most part. It's hard to pick the bottom 4 or 5 from last season. There could be some surprises there. There's a bunch of rookie head coaches that have come into the league. Perth have one, Brisbane and Adelaide and Tasmania as well. So there's a bunch of unknowns. We don't really know. Usual suspects will be up the top, I believe. But look, the preseason wasn't great viewing. For those of you who tuned in, I think the NBL let a little bit slip. The production wasn't very good. It was a budget production, which was clearly seen. And I guess it was frustrating trying to follow the games, talking like it was an intern with a camcorder type stuff, bro, for the preseason
Oh,
games.
shit.
It wasn't well produced. Sometimes didn't have commentary. They forgot to plug the audio in. I'm not sure what they were doing. The live stats on the app would ever really work. So just a bit of encouragement that if it's going to be to that level, just don't televise it. That's my opinion. I think just don't televise it. Keep it closed door, open door for fans. Don't televise it. Let the fans post photos. They're at the exclusive preseason games. Make it a big thing like that. Don't televise it, because I think you do more damage to your brand doing it half-assed than doing it at all. But yeah, I mean, some decent games. A lot of young talent actually in our league, pro. A lot of Knicks stars, potential draft prospects for next year, not just Australian, but from overseas. So I think it's going to be a fun year all in all, and I will be doing a preseason wrap next week with a great of Australian basketball and a commentator great who's been around the game for many years. So I'll do my preview. I'll boot you off that preview, pro. We'll do that on Australian time because you'll probably be sleeping, cuddled up to your teddy bear at that point. But we'll add that on to next week's podcast. So stay tuned to that one.
Yeah, way to communicate with me on that one, brother. I appreciate it.
I just told you.
Thanks.
Unless you want to wake up at, 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m., I think it's scheduled for.
Fuck
and
it.
let's be honest, like, what are you bringing to an NBL preseason preview?
That's a good point. I'll let you guys stroke each other, so I'm good.
Give us your pick for who's going to win the NBL next season, bro. Let's hear it here first. Do you even know all 9 of the? Can you name all the teams in the league?
Fuck no, I can't. I'm here for comedic relief. I know my role. Shit.
Exactly. So stop giving me shit, because I just put it back on you and you got nada. All right. Stats, useful or useless. I saw this one as well, and you added it to the list. While mid-range shots have generally fallen out of vogue in the NBA over the last decade, Durant has made them his calling card. Durant is shooting a whopping 70.3% between 16 feet away from the basket and the three-point line, better known as the mid-range game, the shot of death. Our guy H-Bob hates that shot, but 70.3%. To put that into perspective, he has shot better than 50% from that range over a whole season, just twice in his past 13 active seasons. About a fifth of his shots typically come from that distance, with another fifth coming from 10 to 16 feet away. Useful or useless, pro?
I think it's useful. I think it tells you that, obviously he's dominating from that area, and that's an area that a great player shoots from. And I think it's useful to understand that it's not a shot that you should be shooting 80% of your shots from, but it's a shot that you're going to get. And if you can make it at a high clip, then it's going to help you. They're obviously in first place in their conference. So, and he's playing it extremely well. So I think it's a shot that people got to look at and say, look, if they're going to give it to me and I can make it at a high clip, it's there. Got to shoot it. I think it's definitely useful. Shocker, but I think it's useful.
Yeah, I don't even know what the math is of how many points that is possession on shooting 70%. So someone else can help us out with that on a calculator. But
1.4. A little bit more than 1.4.
Is it?
Yeah, so it's like 70. I mean, depending on, not every possession is worth 2 points, but if you make it 70% of your shots, actually from the mid range, yeah, it's only 2 points. So it's like 1.4. It's 70% of 2 points.
1.4. So it's well above, what's the league average? It's like 1. Is it 1.1 or 1.11 or something like that?
That's a good reason to get Bob back on the show. So
it is. I know it's low ones somewhere there, 1 point something, isn't it? When you look at you look at possessions and all that kind of stuff, and then you got to factor in free throws as well. But I could be completely wrong. But I know it's well above what they're trying to get per game, which is kind of interesting because it is deemed as a death shot. All right, we're going to go to, who do you think the lead? You probably saw the chart, bro, but if you haven't, who do you think the leading scorer is in the NBA in the paint to date?
In the paint. I haven't seen it. I'm going to guess Giannis, but that's just me.
Ja Morant.
No shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's put out a post saying that, with that highlighted, saying that I was, too skinny, too small to play in the NBA. He's leading the league in points in the paint at the moment. There's a cool chart, courtesy of Sideline Sources, that they posted on their Instagram. So, if you want to see it, probably be a few of their slides back by the time you hear this podcast, but it breaks down all the quadrants of the court. It's pretty cool. So it's got top of the key 3. Who do you think that would be?
Top of the key 3. Is that Steph Curry?
Yeah, it's Steph Curry. So Steph Curry owns the top of the key, the left wing and the right wing. Left corner is Grayson Allen. Right corner is Joe Harris. Then we take a step inside the 3-point line. Who do you think's owning free throw line area 2-point shots? Leading scorers. This is a percentage, so keep Durant aside. Yeah. Who's got the most points from the free throw area?
I'm going to say maybe Paul George.
Close. DeMar DeRozan, obvious one.
Oh.
Then you've got left kind of block extended between the block and the elbow is Russell Westbrook. This one was interesting. Left kind of short corner to 3-point line. Who do you think that would be? This one threw me off.
Maybe Chris Paul.
Tyler Herro.
No shit.
Yeah. But just a strange shot. Like that just tells me he's in the corner for spot up threes a lot, and he's pump faking, getting one dribble pull ups.
Yeah,
that's an interesting one. Paul George is on the list. He's on the right short corner. So same thing. That must be a pump fake, get into you, and they actually post him on that side a fair bit as well. The last one you should get. Who would have between the block and the elbow on the right side of the floor? Who's made the most?
Oh.
Once you hear the name, it's a no-brainer. And you might have mentioned this name already.
Probably Chris Paul, if I was going to guess.
Bang, Chris Paul. Coming off that pick and roll, going right, downhill.
Snaking it.
That's his money shot. But an interesting chart. I think I find that very useful because it just gives you, number one, it gives you how dominant Steph Curry is from three. He owns 3 spots league-wide for the most scores from those spots. But then, some weird ones. Westbrook being in there is one that I found strange. DeRozan makes sense. Ja Morant shocked me. But the Tyler Herro from the left short corner is an interesting one. Useful, useless pro for you.
Oh, useful. It's always good to see who dominates spots. It's those shot charts are good. I know the NBA.com does them, and it's really valuable to watch if you're really studying the game. They got them on every player, every team. So it's always good to see what quadrants of the courts players are doing well and not so well from. So I'd say it's very useful.
I'm a big fan of those kind of analytics and stats. Not really analytics, they're more stats, but I'm a big fan of those. All right, last one. Did you watch the Lakers-Boston game?
I did not.
All right, so on the Boston sports telecast, they interviewed Dennis Schroeder after the game. I think he had 20-something 6-6. I think it's 26 6-6 or something like that. They won 130 to 108. So whoever runs the control room there for what is that, NBC Sports Boston, they put a caption next to Dennis Schroeder's name saying, quote, "You're paying Russ how much?" No, sorry, it says you're paying Russ $44 million, LOL. This is on the live telecast. So there's an actual, when the little label comes up with the name of who they're interviewing.
Yeah.
It said, "You're paying Russ $44 million, LOL," and it's got a smiley face. It's got a smiley face of Dennis Schroeder. Useful or useless, pro?
For now, it's useful because
fucking hilarious. What it is.
It is hilarious. It is hilarious. It's very useful to me to be, It's funny because you would never think in a million years that anybody would write that on a telecast.
No way. It's like social media shit. I like it. I love the trolling. Love a good troll.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it's going to go. It started with team social media accounts going at each other. Now it's going to be telecasts. It's like I said, it's fucking anarchy everywhere. It's fucking Mad Max beyond Thunderdome. It's just
if one place is stuck in the past, it's TV telecast. So I think it's needed to an extent to engage that young crowd that likes that kind of back and forth banter. It's kind of Twitter-ish, Instagram-ish. I think it's a smart move.
It's pretty fun. No doubt about it. I like it.
I like it. I think it was hilarious. I had a good chuckle out loud when I saw that shit. Just saw
that was pretty good.
The exact still shot they've used of Schroeder is him smiling too, which is a fair point because they famously turned down paying him the max and essentially traded for Russ, who's arguably making more and hasn't worked out for him so far. And then Schroeder got the win, but Boston aren't doing that well neither, so we can't get too ahead of ourselves. Fact or fake news, pro? What do you have?
Bogues, first one. Jimmy Butler's fucking playing his ass off right now, averaging 25, 6, and 6, basically. Would you put Jimmy Butler right now in your top 5 in MVP candidates?
Oh, I probably wouldn't. I've still got Jokic up there. I've got Steph, KD, Jokic. I think Giannis is still up there, even though he hasn't had the best. He's had a good start, but not as good as it's been in the past. And I think Embiid's going to be up there as well. But his problem is games played. But I think I'd go top 10. So I'd say fake news. But he's having a hell of a year. I think if it was top 10, I would have given you a fact. But fake news right now.
Yeah, I got him right now. I got him at 6. I got in no order. I've got in the 5. I got Durant, Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Curry. Probably Curry number 1 if you wanted to be honest. Outside of that, I would say him and Devin Booker, maybe Ja Morant probably playing at that next level. So is Embiid. But I don't have him in the top 5, but he's close. I mean, he's a guy that, I probably had, give or take, I probably had Butler at top 30, going into the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's jumped right now as far as his play this year. He's in the top 10. I got him with you. So he's probably in that 6 to 10 range for sure. But he's having a hell of a year. And last year, Miami was not very good. And this year, they're right now, they're top 2 in the East. And playing really well.
He missed some games too, didn't he, earlier on in the season?
I believe he did.
Yeah,
I believe he did. So, Bogues, right now, the New York Knicks are struggling a little bit. As we record, I believe they're 8-7.
They just won a game, yep.
Okay, so they just won a game, so they're at that 9-7 level. Right now, top 7 in the East. Do they have a chance of being out of the top 8 when the season ends?
Fake news. No, I think they'll make the top 8. I think they'll be solid enough. They have been very inconsistent. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They just beat, I think it was Houston, and it did not look convincing. It looked like they were going to squander that, and Houston are awful.
Right.
I think yeah, not look, the East is wide open, as we discussed earlier on, man. Like it's so they're what are they? They're 2.5 games. So they're a game and a half of falling out of the 10 completely, right? And they're 2.5 games from being first. Like, it's insane. It's insane that we're almost at 20 games in the season, and usually there's a big, those bottom teams start really falling back where there's only really one team left to crack. But that's what the top 10 has done now. But even without the top 10, yeah, I think they'll be in the top 8. I think they'll be about where they are. They'll be 4, 5, 6. But a Thibs team, I don't count out. I think they'll clean things up. They're not playing great basketball, and they're 9-7, so it's not the end of the world for them.
Bogues, like, it's unbelievable with how they are defensively last year compared to this year. Like, last year, I keep the stats on my database that I have, team stats, and the Knicks were like top 5 in scoring defense all year. Right now, they're 17, averaging 107.1. The opponents are right now. Defensively, they're definitely struggling. We talked about their new acquisitions and things like that. They're not really defensive minded, with Fournier and Kemba. So they are an issue. Now, the issue that I have with them, Bogues, is like, okay, so maybe Washington's going to drop. Right. But right now you've got Milwaukee underachieving at 8-8. You've got Atlanta underachieving at 7-9. And that both of those teams are going to make some type of a jump. Milwaukee's probably going to make a way bigger jump than Atlanta is. And Cleveland's most likely going to drop. The Celtics are going to be a dogfight. I think right now, like the Celtics, Charlotte, New York, those guys are they're going to be jockeying for position most of the year. The question is, like, do the Knicks really have it where they could step up like they did, last year? Can they get to that 5? Can they get to that 6? I think they do. I say it is. I say it's fact. I think they do have an issue. I'm not saying it's definite, but I definitely could see them dropping out of the top 8 with the 2 teams that could move up. There aren't many teams I think are going to drop. I think Charlotte's going to be pretty good. Philly, you'd never know. So I think that they have a chance of dropping out of the top 8, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a dogfight from that 7. I think that 7 to 10, 7 to 11 in the East is going to be a dogfight for some teams, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it will. It's going to be close.
Bogues, last one. Would you take James Harden over Devin Booker right now?
Well, the fact that you said right now, if I'm building, Devin Booker's younger, so I would say fake news. Look, it is a tough one. I'll just go based strictly on age. Devin Booker's younger, and he's starting to play very, very well. James has better numbers. So James right now is at 21.2 points a game, 8.8 assists, 7.7 rebounds, so almost a triple-double every night, 89% from the free throw line, 38% from 3, 41.6 from the field. And we go to Devin Booker, and where is he at? He's similar scoring output, a little bit more, 22.7 a night, 5.9 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 83.8% from the line, similar from the three-point line at 37%. So similar numbers offensively besides the assist numbers. Harden's having a better year statistically. Phoenix are winning more games, or close to more games, I believe, at least out of the last 10, 15 games. We're at Brooklyn, 12-5 for Brooklyn and 12-3 for Phoenix. Look, right now, because you said right now, I would say Devin Booker because he's younger. If I'm a GM, I'd probably go him, but James is having a fantastic year. If it was career versus career, I'd take James Harden.
He doesn't look in great shape, Bogues, does he?
James?
Yeah.
No, he looks round, but he's getting it done, man. This is the thing with him. Even when he was really fat at the end of that Houston stint, when he came back before he got traded, he still put up some huge numbers. He's just so gifted. He's so talented offensively that he looks like, at times he has a Swiss ball under that jersey, but his numbers are just mind-boggling. But the concern you have with that shape is when it becomes nut-crunching time in a playoff series when you need to get into a stance and play 2 ends. Is he in peak physical condition to do that on top of having to carry the scoring load if KD's having an off night? Probably not. But as far as regular season getting your numbers up, it looks like he can do it with one leg.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, he's always going to be able to put up points and put up on the offensive end for sure. If this was last year, I would probably say James. I would say it was fact. But I think since the finals, the way the guy's playing now, I'm going to say Devin Booker. So I'm saying fake news. I'd take Devin Booker over James Harden right now because of the age, because of the juice this kid has, the shape the other guy's in. Not that, I mean, look, he'll probably get in better shape, obviously, before the playoffs. I'm not really worried about that. He always figures it out. And they're going to go deep. But this Booker, man, I mean, some of the shit that he's been doing the last couple of months, the last month or so, obviously they only played 15 games, but I watched him against the Mavericks both nights, man. He makes some tough shots, dude. When he needs it, it helps today. He's got CP there, but like, I'll tell you what, he's fun to watch. He's getting to be really good. He's a very good player.
And
top 10 in my
numbers
opinion.
wise, to give more to Booker, his usage probably will be much less than James's, I assume. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I would just assume. What I like about Devin is he's okay to play off the ball for stretches because we know Chris Paul is their ball handler. Sometimes Devin doesn't touch it a couple of times up the floor, and he's okay with that. Whereas, James is touching it every time down if KD's not quick firing it. So I think there's some disparity there that you have to kind of talk about when you look at those numbers. So if you put Devin in the system with Brooklyn, his numbers probably go up even more. But what I like about Devin is he's okay to defer to Chris Paul for stretches of the fourth quarter or stretches of a half and not be pouting about not getting touches. So I think that's an important attribute.
Yeah, and their numbers are very close to each other as far as what they shoot. Like, they're both shooting 41. I think James at about 88. They're like in the low 40s in their field goal percentages. They're both high 30s in their 3-point shooting, and their free throw, I think James got them high 80s compared to like mid 80s for Devin. But yeah, they're both really good to watch. I just like Booker because he plays off the ball. He's a little more active and things like that. So,
what would your pick be, Booker today or James in his prime in Houston?
Ooh. I'm probably going to say James in his prime.
His numbers were crazy at that time, albeit he was shooting 500 free throws a night, but it doesn't matter. He was getting it done, and we faced him a few times in the playoffs, and he was always a tough scout.
Oh, God. He was tough. I'll tell you what, in Oklahoma City, right before he left for Houston, his ability to pass the ball was phenomenal, and he didn't hold it like he did in Houston. If he could ever go back to that passing versus what he did offensively with Houston, with his passing in Oklahoma City, I mean, he's relentless.
Well, he kind of is. I mean, he's eight assists a game. People don't realize how good, because of the ISO, cha step back in Houston that he, was really good at the last 5, 6, 7 years. People forgot how good he's a great playmaker. He doesn't need to score. He is a volume scorer, but he doesn't need to. He can actually almost run a team from that shooting guard spot as a point if he needed to. And that's, I think, why when people looked at, even we were probably cognizant of Kyrie, James, KD, how does it all fit? Arguably, you keep James at the 1 and Kyrie at the 2 if they're all healthy, right? Because I think it's a great point.
When he was in Oklahoma City, like I said, I remember saying this to Durant, and this wasn't like a private conversation or anything. I just said it with my own evaluation of it. Early on, I thought that they should have treated Westbrook like Dwayne Wade and got him off the ball more and put James on the ball and ran him point. Just because I always thought James was a better passer, had much better vision, and I just thought he could do things as far as getting guys set up. Versus like if Westbrook was pushing in transition and this guy was getting him easier shots, that he'll be a more of an efficient player, less ball holding. Because James didn't do all that ball holding stuff as much early on in Oklahoma City. I always thought that he should have been the point guard and Westbrook should have been the 2. Not to take away from Westbrook's game. Yeah. I just think that James sort of could get him where he needed it, when he needed it, and it's just interesting. I don't think people understand because they just see him, like you said, with that cha stuff. Like, they don't see how much of a great passer and great vision the guy's got.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, that wraps up episode 43. So next week, we are going to do some NBA city rankings. Now, there's 30 odd or 29 LA, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're going to do our top 5 and our bottom 5. And there's a bunch of metric that old Pro has put together in a spreadsheet. So we've got some homework to do. So stay tuned for that. But it'll go through everything from hotels to, the locker room to food to climate to all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for that one. I'm sure it'll be a laugh.
We're going to have some fun with it, Bogues. I did this exercise a couple years back, and I had to redo it because I didn't do it for Dallas. I did it for a few of the Mavericks staff guys that we ranked all the cities that we stayed in. And so obviously we didn't have Dallas in there, so I had to go back. But I think it'll be pretty fun to do. A pretty good exercise.
Yep. Catch that one next week. We're actually going to leave everyone with a few questions that we had on our call-in chat today. So before our podcast, every Sunday Australian time, Saturday night, generally US time. If you want to jump on and ask a question, just download the call-in app for, I think it's only on iPhone at the moment. I think Android's coming, but you can jump on. You can ask us a question, interact with us. We'll give you a teaser of what that sounds like after this, and that will wrap the episode. Thanks, bro.
Bogues, thanks, brother. I'll see you soon.
We're going to welcome everyone to episode 43 Q&A via call-in. Appreciate everyone joining. We have a few listeners here. If any of you would like to jump on and ask a question, feel free. All right, Chris, unmute and fire away.
G'day, guys. Thanks for having me on again. This is probably a question for you, Andrew. It's in regards to when you did the Howie Games podcast a few years ago. It's probably in relation to, when you sort of talked about, he sort of asked you a question regarding, how do you rally players to try and play as a team when they're sort of focused on their own personal careers. It's like, I think you sort of said, you guys tried to sort of bond together, but they were sort of like, well, but I need to get my stats or I'm not going to get paid my money next year. Do you think that's just is it a culture thing? Is it more of it almost seems like some players would rather, get paid more money as opposed to take less money, as opposed to have, success, if that makes sense. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, it does make sense.
It is, it's an interesting topic because basically there's two aspects in the NBA, and Pro can probably touch on this a bit as well, but, you get paid per your production and your stats, but it kind of goes through ebbs and flows, especially with analytics. There's some people that will study analytics and be like, well, if this guy was with us and getting X amount of minutes, he'd be much better, so we might overpay him as a young talent. But it's actually gone the other way at times as well, where there's notorious stat patters on shitty teams that put up 20 and 10, but teams kind of know, good teams know that shit, like he might not fit into a system that's trying to win. So there's a balance there. But look, yeah, it is. I mean, if you're averaging 9 rebounds and you can steal a 10th rebound off your teammate and average a double-double for the season, that can be much better in your agent's marketing tools for getting you an extension and all that kind of stuff. So there's pros and cons to it. I think it all comes down to money at the end of the day, and we don't see it as much in Australia because the levels of money aren't as great, and a lot of the contracts, at least in Australian rules football and NRL, they aren't heavily predicated towards bonuses of rebounds and points like they do in basketball, like goals or whatever, like that kind of stuff. So it's not as competitive on the court, but that's the challenge that every NBA team has. It's can you put aside your individual motivations for the betterment of the team, and that's easier said than done. And it's a lot of stars or second tier stars or third tier stars have a mentality of like, yeah, I want to win now, but on my terms. So what that means is I still want to get my 25 a game, whereas a new coach might come in and say, hey, we don't need 25 from you. We'd rather get 20, but can you lift your assist totals up and move the ball a bit more? That player will probably be pissed off with that and want out. And that's kind of what we see. Pro, what are your thoughts around it?
I think that, like you said, money fucks everything up, right? And everything's motivated towards money for the most part for players. So, and they've always played that role of, putting up numbers. And there are very few coaches could actually sit those players down and teach them how to be winning players or how to play in a sort of a different type of system where it's got to be team first. And I think where coaches get this, I think with two things, I think that the front office has got to do their homework as far as, taking the right types of players that could fit into these systems. And that's why, front offices value the information that they can get about players from other teams when they're going to acquire them through draft, trade, or free agency to try to bring in the best possible people in those roles to fit. And the second thing is I think the coach has to address that before the season even starts. I think and I've been around coaches that try to address it in game 30 and it's too late. I think game 3 is too late. I think you really need to, first of all, understand the players you're going to bring in. Second of all, you have to set the precedent early, and you got to use your bench as far as motivation for that. And it's a tough dynamic, because all these players know that the more numbers they put up, the more money they're going to get. And the coaches are going to try to say, well, the more you win, the more teams are going to want you, and it's going to up your value. And it's really hard to sort of sell that, especially if a player's wired to be selfish. And we know, you know that, Bogues. We know there's about at least 100 players in the league that are just flat out selfish. They're going to come up and just try to put up points. They have no idea how to play in a team structured environment, but bad teams continue to sign them because no one wants to play for those other teams. So they know they can get these vigilantes that could put up 20 points, on 22 shots, not be winning players, but they put up numbers. I think that it's tough, and I think you have to try to bring in the right type of player. And I don't think you can rally players that much. I think you could have a really good environment like the Spurs were back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where they could bring in one tough type of player like a Steven Jackson, right? Surrounded with Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, and those guys, and maybe try to shield their weaknesses of being more of a me guy than a team guy. But it's really hard, especially when those teams that bring in 4 of those guys and they don't have those types of players like a Duncan, Ginobili, or Parker that could sort of surround them and try to make them try to play a better brand of basketball. So, yeah, I think it's tough.
There's a mix. You look at Minnesota; they're a prime example of kind of those lines where they've got 3 or 4 good young pieces that are kind of battling for the reins of who's the number one: Towns, Edwards, even Russell to an extent, and then that can go either way as well. Most times it goes the wrong way. So I can give you an example from me personally, Chris. I mean, I was a guy in Milwaukee I knew I was getting 15 to 20 touches for me to create a shot or for myself or for a teammate on the block every night for 5 or 6 straight years, and then got to Golden State and they were trying to integrate me and keep me happy. So they have a certain number of post touches just to keep the big fella happy. But as I kind of transitioned into that role, it was frustrating a little bit just because I was like, I can do more. And then it was a realization of like, there's Steph and Clay on the wings as my shooters, 2 elite shooters. Like, it's better off them taking a 3 than me getting an ISO post up. It's the reality of it that I had to suck up. And I was okay with that because I was like, if I buy into a role with this team, 25, 30 minutes, rebound, hit people, be physical, block shots, play through the high post for some assists, I'm happy with that to get wins. As long as we're winning. If we weren't winning, then it's a different conversation. You're like, hey, I think I can help more and maybe help us win some more games. But we started to win, and it's a tough pill to swallow when you come from a system that I did where everything was predicated around me. I was, the 1 or 2 option for a number of years there, to then go to a 4th or 5th option. It's not the best thing to hear, but that's the reality of being on a good team that's going to win. You got Andre Iguodala's the same. He came from, I think he was an all-star a couple of years in Philly, and then
He was.
Yeah, went to Denver and then came to us and then they asked him, hey, can you come off the bench for us? He probably wasn't too happy about it at the time, but then understood his role and he was the leader of that second group that got us to a championship, won a championship 1 year, and then the next year we didn't, and then he won 2 more when KD was there. So that's another prime example of a guy who, although it was tough to hear at the time, bought into his role, and that's probably the hardest thing. It just, the league is predicated around numbers and you get paid based on your numbers. And sometimes guys are just like, I'd rather just get mine and be the guy on a team that's, 6 to 10 mediocre, could make the playoffs, might not. I'd rather still have my 20, 25 points a night. And then it's a history thing as well. You're in that conversation of like, oh, maybe if he was on a better team and he would have won more, that's really not his fault. He did what he could. There's that whole conversation around the legacy piece. So there's a lot of players that would probably choose, some crazy stats over a championship, and that's just the reality of the guys you're dealing with in the NBA there, Chris. So I hope that that answers your question. We'll go on to the next one. Simon, go ahead, unmute your microphone and shoot.
Yeah, g'day, Bogues and Pro. My favourite player when I was a kid was Horace Grant, and I was fortunate enough after I went to the US for my 30th, went to the Lakers in Miami game and bumped into Craig Sager after the game. And I asked him, did he have any stories or what was his info on Horace Grant? He said, there was a story where he had the Karl Malone flu, where every time they played Utah, often he'd take the night off because Karl was just one of those players that would dominate, and Horace couldn't get his head around it. Were there any players that you, as a player or as a coach for Pro, that you just, no matter what you did, they owned you? And conversely, any players, when you look at the schedule, you're like, yep, I'm looking forward to that game because I know I'm going to get, 25 and 10 or whatever?
Yeah, great question, Simon. That's a really good question, actually. I guess for me, and by the way, we'd call that Carmelone-itis, is what Horace Grant would have had. So you just put an itis on whoever's name it is. But early on in my career, I struggled with two guys. One was Dwight Howard in his prime in Orlando, like prime Hall of Fame. Dwight Howard, he was getting 20 to 30 touches a night. They ran a lot of good shit. Stan Van Gundy had him. They'd get him ducking in the middle of the floor rather than posting up a lot. So they'd spread shooters with Hito and Rashard Lewis, and you couldn't really double. And I was light in the ass my first 2 or 3 years, so I wasn't the strongest dude. And he just punished me. Like I never dealt with someone he's somewhat undersized because he's about 6'9", 6'10" at best. And but he was strong as an ox and athletic. Like you could throw it to the top of the board. So you kind of were stuck in a hard place. You couldn't over deny him because he'd slip for lobs. And I struggled with him probably for about 4 or 5 years. And then it's funny, after that, once I started figuring out the game, grew into my body, I felt like I played him pretty well for the next 6 or 7 years. And the other one for me was Yao Ming. He was in his prime when I first came in the league. He was just so tough. He'd park himself on the block, and he had one night where he got hot against me in Houston, and I just remember like doing everything right defensively, like pushing him off the block, making him work for the catch, and then he felt in a rhythm and just turn either shoulder and just shoot a fadeaway right over you, not even fading really because he's 7'6", and you just be like so pissed off because he did everything right, textbook, and he just had such a beautiful touch for a guy his height and could handle the ball well, and he gave me fits, and then he obviously retired early. So, but I as much as you hated playing some of those guys, I definitely wouldn't take the night off. I'd definitely try to have a crack, and if you struggle, but I do know, there are stories, I'm sure Pro has some, that there are certain guys that see that calendar matchup coming up, like a Horace Grant and Karl Malone, where they either get the flu the day before or they just take the night off and they just struggle with certain matchups. I'm sure Steph Curry has a long list of guys that don't want to guard him and might have an injury or a rest night when they see him on the calendar, and that's all part of the fun and games of the NBA. Pro, do you have any good examples of an itis for us?
Not really an itis, but because we didn't really play much defense in Dallas, let's be honest, and there weren't many defensive players when I was there in 6 years. But like, I'll tell you what, like a guy who killed us consistently was Devin Booker. I could remember a couple of times where the guy just, we had pretty good leads on him, and he made, he stormed back, basically carrying Phoenix, game winner. Actually, won another game against him in 2021. But like, I could have sworn he made like 2 or 3 game winners against us at home when we had comfortable leads in each of those games. And look, like you said, Steph and plenty of guys just sort of lit us up, but. It just depends, but yeah, there are certain players. You hear certain stories about players that didn't want to get embarrassed at home and things like that, so they would take the night off, or they would pull up lame with a bad ankle, or the infamous the mental illness of physical injuries. Got a bad back where no one could really chart who's got a bad back and how. So they say I got a sore back, and they can't really pinpoint it, so they sit out the night and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know, man. It's tough. But, yeah, Devin Booker kicked the shit out of us almost every night they played us in the last couple of years that I was there. But, it's pretty funny, Bogues, when you see those guys come up.
Oh, no doubt. And just to finish off Simon's question, we would label like whatever, if you just took a random night off or was sore for 2 or 3 games, like us guys in the locker room, we'd pick whoever the star matchup was that you had to face and just put an itis at the end of it. So it might not even be that you're missing it for that. Like you'd legit have an injury. We're like, oh, you've got Devin Booker itis. And it was just kind of a rolling joke that I'm sure pros made those comments to someone just joking around just to break guys' balls. But yeah, man, there definitely is a lot of shenanigans that goes on, and some guys are notorious for missing certain games or certain styles of play. And also to finish your question, you asked, who did I like going against? For me, it was any Mike D'Antoni coach team when I was in Milwaukee, because they would always play small or have a smaller 5. It was Amari in Phoenix, and he was a beast on the offensive end, but I knew defensively he was light. I could move him around and I could get whatever shot I wanted. And then when he went to New York, D'Antoni, he brought him over as well, and they always had small guys playing the 5 because they like to be mobile. So I felt like I'd always have a 15, 20-point night with 10 boards, and you wouldn't even really break in a sweat against them. And they almost were okay with post up touches back then. Like, you know, they didn't want to give up threes and they didn't want to foul. So if you made a couple of hooks on them, they didn't really care. They'd run the ball back up on you and try to get a three up. So that was one coach and one style of play that I really enjoyed playing against. Thanks for that question, Simon. We'll go to the next one from JF. Unmute and fire away.
All right. So from last week's episode, you gave Rich Paul a point. Please take that back. You made a horrendous comparison. Please take that back, mate. Please take it back.
I said a small amount of credit. I was what did I give him? I think I said 25%.
The equivalent would be if Ben Simmons was playing for Philadelphia, balling out, and then Rich Paul telling Philadelphia, you know what? You don't have to pay us anymore. Like, we'll just play basketball for free. That's the equivalent.
Yeah, you're right.
It's fair. It's fair. It was a long bow, definitely. But I think that there is a slight point with teams getting away from doing it as well, because it could be what JF is talking about. Is I said that Rich Paul has told, you know, John has said that John Wall's been told to sit out by Houston. They're still paying him. They don't want to play him because they're going young. He tried to compare that to the Ben Simmons, and it's definitely not a great comparison. But my point was that if NBA teams can do that, let's say you're in a free agency year, it can affect you long term. So that was, I definitely don't think it's apples for apples. So I take that in stride. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So my question really, I'm not a fan of Rich Paul, but he really makes a lot of mistakes in public, right? He wants to be a public figure, a celebrity. So he's really open to that criticism. I don't know any other NBA agents by name, right? They don't do that kind of branding. But I'm just curious, why does every single NBA player have an agent when the CBA is so kind of rigid and there's so many guardrails around contracts? There's probably a good portion of the league that, you know, are just giving away 2% on these deals when they're already predetermined by the structure of the CBA. I can bring up plenty of examples, but restricted free agents, like Giannis's big contract last year, he was going to sign with any team, but it was going to give him the max. I don't know why he's giving 2%. There was no negotiation necessary. All the legal agreements could be done by billable hours to be under $10,000.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That's a very fair point. And I guess, and 2% is the low end, by the way. I know some guys that were paying 4 or 5% for your agency for just contracts, which is just absolutely bonkers, and they're too scared to ask for a lower rate. But yeah, I think you make a fair point. I think if you're a max guy, it's a bit easier. But look, your agent does do some things behind the scenes that probably aren't noted. A good agent, anyway. I doubt Rich Paul's doing it, but for instance, my agent helped me send out when I first got drafted, helped me send out an intern to help me furnish my apartment, help me to just get to normality of it, setting up your bills, all that kind of stuff, helping with that stuff. So that was part of the fee. My agent, spent a lot of money taking me out to dinner at different times. My agent had helped me when I was homesick. So he did a lot of things that probably were outside of the scope that I doubt Rich Paul's doing. A few other things that you do need an agent for, putting the max guys aside, is that if you want to trade, if you are not happy, if you're not happy with your minutes, if you're not happy with your role, blah, 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 your agent would then go to the GM and try to push some buttons that way, rather than, me going to the media saying, I hate this coach, this is bullshit, because then I'm going to get fined and all that kind of stuff. So there's that role as well. So look, your good agent should be, you don't want to be hearing from them every day, but there are some notorious agents that you only hear about when your contract's expiring. And I know that for a fact. Some guys couldn't even get a call back, once they've locked them into their a min deal or a mid-level, and they've got a few max guys on their books. They're constantly taking care of those max guys. And then it's contract time. It's like, hey man, how you doing? Oh, we should catch up for dinner. Oh, by the way, yeah, your contract's up. We should probably talk about what numbers you want. So it's a slimy game. Look, I think agents are needed if they're in the realm of what I was just talking about. And my agent was David Bauman, still a close friend to this day. He was at my wedding. Really was a great, pure agent in it for the right reasons. Had a law degree as well, which helped. So he could do a lot of other contract things for me. But there are a lot of snakes that are making 2 to 3% for doing nothing. Like you said, I mean, do you really need to negotiate a deal for Giannis or Devin Booker or Kevin Durant? Probably not, right? So I would ask the question of, if I'm paying you 2% of my $200 million max, what other value am I getting? What else are you bringing to the table? What am I getting for this 2% besides you, getting the contract from the GM and shuffling it down the table to me to sign and saying, yeah, I'm proud of you, and then giving it back to the GM? Because that's about the extent of what you're doing.
It's crazy, and I don't think Chris Paul is an agent right now after Rose, or what was his? Yeah,
I think it was with Rose. Yeah, because he went to New
Rose
York.
went to the Knicks. Yeah, I don't think he got replaced. And that was a great My Journey episode, by the way. I really enjoyed that one. I'm looking forward to the next one when it's going to be released.
Yeah, we got to work on it and getting lazy.
And so that situation you did say where they are valuable when you're complaining for minutes or want to get traded. Did you ever make that request before? Is that like spoiling a future My Journey? Or and B, like, what would stop you from actually going to the GM yourself and saying, like, this is bullshit? Well,
it's awkward. It's awkward because you got to see them every day. You kind of want a conduit that, like, look, we're reactive. Athletes are reactive. If you caught me after a bad game and I went up to the GM, I probably would have said things I regretted, or a game I got benched or whatever. So, my agent's role to an extent was being a psychologist to me as well. It was like, hey, Bogues, calm down. It's, sleep on it. Let's chat tomorrow in the morning. He had all the techniques, to get me off the ledge. And then, if I was still pissed 3-4 days later, then I'll fly out to see you. I'll go see the GM. We'll have a chat. So I think it's needed for that aspect. It just becomes awkward if I'm going direct to the GM. They might know some things that you don't want them to know how I'm struggling because X, Y, Z, or shit, I'm ready to trade this guy, so there's all those kind of things. And that's what an agent does. And as far as me, I've been on record. Yeah. I mean, the year I got traded from Milwaukee, I asked for a trade confidentially. And I got told, no, we're not going to get fair value back. At the time I was, top 5, top 10 big man in the league. And they were just like, we're not going to get fair value back for a big. So we're not moving you. And then I broke my ankle 2 weeks later. And the GM and the coach were on the hot seat, and they made a move for Monte Ellis, which got him to the 8th seed. Didn't save their jobs, but it got him to the 8th seed. And then that's how I ended up in Golden State. So that was, I wasn't a guy that was going to go public with it. It's just one of those things. But Pro, what are your thoughts around it? I think I kind of know your thoughts, but give us a spiel.
Yeah, like for Giannis, right? Giannis was unknown coming out, so his agents did a lot of work for him throughout the draft to try to get him drafted in the right spot. And then on top of that, they don't get paid for they don't get paid for their whole rookie deal. They take 95% of the first round picks, don't pay their agent a fee at all. So they got to pay through that. They have to pay anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 for your pre-draft training. They got to sort of fly to see you play. They got to do, they incur probably close to $100,000 in expenses in your first deal. So probably out of loyalty, a lot of these guys do it. Again, most of these guys aren't paying them on the first deal. And then a lot of these agents lose their players, a month before they sign their second deal. So think about putting 75, 80,000 each client of money into each client in a 4 or 5 year period, and then losing half of them when it comes down to signing the second deal where you could actually get paid on. Now you get paid a percentage of their endorsement deals, in their rookie deals. So that's where you may try to make your money up from. But I think there is a certain amount of loyalty there. And then, like Bogues said, the player usually doesn't have the confrontational conversations with the GM. That's the agents. That's why the agent gets paid. Two reasons why they get paid: A, to take care of them there, as far as having those conversations through negotiations, through issues they're having with playing time, role, blah, blah, blah. And then also when it's time to, if you're a restricted free agent and you're an agent that actually has a lot of clients like a Rich Paul, you could sort of hold, you could probably hold that GM hostage and say, look, if you don't sign this guy to a restrict, if you don't sign this guy or give him this type of deal, you're not going to get any of my players at all, in free agency. So they do have a lot of clout that way if you go to an agent with a lot of clients. The problem with that is if you're not a player that's really worth it to them, you're not making them a lot of money in your deal, you're a minimum salary guy or just hovering around that mid-level exception area, they may not answer your calls a lot if they can't get a deal for you. So they're not magic workers, but they do a lot of things on the side that that the players aren't going to do. They're not going to do the day-to-day. They're not going to call teams and try to get you a deal come midnight of that free agency, come July. They're not going to try to get you traded when you want to get traded. They're not going to. So I think it's important. I think they do earn their money that way. There's a lot of agents that don't earn their money because they don't really like. When things are going great for the player, it's easy to collect that 3-4% of whatever they're making. But now when you really have to work to get them a team because out of the 30 teams, there's only maybe 2 interested, and you got to really work to get them that deal. a lot of players with their agents won't do that for them. They won't, those calls they were answering in year 1, 2, 5, 6, that they were answering right away, getting to you every need. Now you go to year 8, 9, 10 when you're not as valuable. A lot of times, I've dealt with that. A lot of former All-Stars, Hall of Fame players that are in the twilight of their careers, that they can't get their agent to call them back. They can't get anybody on the phone. I remember trying to, calling teams for guys in the last couple of summers, to try to get them teams. I said, what the fuck is your agent doing, man? And they go, yeah, well, I said, yeah, no shit. I'm not fucking getting paid for this. So, yeah, I think the agents are important. Like I said, they incur a lot of costs that people don't know about in the first 4 years of a deal, especially on a player that you don't know if you're going to get paid off on. And then also the money they had to pay them through college and high school to recruit them. So they incur a lot of bills coming into it. And maybe it's just the payback on the back end, or maybe nobody gives a fuck and the player should just fire him anyway. Who knows? But, they do incur a lot of costs and they do a lot of work prior to that. There are some really good agents like Bauman for Bogues here. There's a lot of good ones. I know we talk about a lot of bad ones, a lot of ones who fuck up, but there are a lot of good ones that earn their money. There are not many of them, but there are some.
I mean, they're the ones you don't hear. To JF's point, there's a lot you don't hear about, and I think that's a good thing. I don't want my agent to be a celebrity. I want my agent to be an agent. So I think JF, your point around there's a lot we don't hear and know about. I think they're the good ones for what I want and what I need as an athlete. Thanks for that one, JF.